Strive presents. Oh, got to get ready.
Laptop. Plant, that looks nice there.
Ooh, cookies, yum.
Notebook.
Microphone, webcam, and coffee, of course. A video podcast where deaf, hard of hearing, and disabled creatives and their allies chat about experiences, best practice, and the future of the arts. The Green Room.
Ramps on the Moon. Take over.
Hello, folks, and welcome to another series of The Green Room. This series is a Ramps on the Moon takeover and will be 5 episodes looking at the creation and the making of Ramps on the Moon's Leeds Playhouse production of Oliver Twist. Oliver Twist is a fully accessible show combining integrated audio description, BSL and captions. And in each episode, we will be chatting about a different element of the making of the show. As ever, if you are watching us live on YouTube, hit the like button and leave any comments in the chat. And if you enjoy our conversation today, Oliver Twist is available to watch online until the 20th of November via Leeds Playhouse's website. And watch this space for where it goes after that. Right, today in the Green Room, I'm very excited to have the wonderful, as my dog starts barking, the wonderful Hayley Grindle, designer extraordinaire, and Kirsty, who was our costume supervisor for Oliver Twist. And we're just going to chat to them about the making of Oliver and their involvement. Hello, Hayley. Hello, Kirsty. Thank you so much for joining us today. So just to begin with, I'm going to do a little audio description of myself. As you'll see, we have BSL interpreters today to interpret for everybody. And I will introduce myself and then I will introduce the wonderful Emma, who is interpreting for me today. So I am a woman in her 30s. I have long brown wavy hair. Today I'm wearing some little turquoise hoops and a khaki green top. And I'm sitting in my kitchen with a dark grey background with some cow paintings in the background and some wood effect panels on the side and a little yellow chair in the background as well. So, and I have my trusty cup of tea in a pale green mug, which I will be sipping from. And Emma, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Emma. Sign name is pinching index fingers and thumbs from the forehead, sort of the shape of a bob, which I used to have, which I don't have now. It's kind of a scraggy hair up situation today, but I'm channeling autumn, I think. I've got green top, similar to our host, Jo. I've got, I don't know, brown bow in the hair, and my background is kind of a sort of a lightish white grey colour. So that's me.
Wonderful, thank you so much. I should say that my sign name is Sarge, basically, Jo. So like that. I like to add a wink, but that's just me. And Hayley, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Hayley, sign name, which is the squiggle sign for designer, and then into hug. So I'm like a big designer hug. And today I am wearing a black polo neck and I have denim dungarees on. I have long brown wavy, a bit messy hair. The background behind me is white and I've actually got, it's like a big circle rose mirror behind me, which rose coloured gold mirror, which actually when I'm on Zoom makes it look like I've got a halo. So that's the image of me.
Brilliant. And interpreting today for Hayley.
Oh, yes.
That's fine, it's fine.
It's Anna.
Hello everybody, my name's Anna. My sign name is Anna, which is like innocent but kind of not. I've got long brownish reddish hair. I'm quite pale with freckles. Wearing a bright pink or fuchsia top and a very boring plain background, just white.
Lovely, amazing, lovely to meet you both. And Kirsty, would you like to introduce yourself?
My name's Kirsty. I have got long blonde hair, slightly wavy. I'm wearing a black top today that has a scoop neck, which is a bit of a sports scoop neck jersey top with pink and black and white stripes in it. I'm currently sat in Lee's Playhouse in one of the dressing rooms. So there's a white brick background, and there is a little costume rail, but no costumes on it today, with a grey square, which is a notice board, and there's a red door to the right hand side of me, or the left hand side, depends which way it's reflected. And today's signing for me, I've got Tom.
Hello, my name's Tom. My sign name is Tom, so it's the sign for That's It, linked to a very old story. I'm wearing a black jumper. My background is a curtain that's grey and a brown door. Yeah.
I forgot to say what my sign name was, I'm so sorry. It's a fairly recent sign name, as of Oliver Twist. I was named it by Caro and Claire. So it's like Kirsty, not so aggressive, more grounded.
Oh, you've got one! You've got a new one. That's great for you.
Yeah, like excitement also, hopefully.
Such a lovely moment when you get your sign name. Caro gave me mine as well, so it was like really, you're like, yes.
I did have an old one, which is William Grin is the story, and I won't go into that one, but William gave me a sign name that was naughty, so we don't use that one anymore.
Brilliant, I love it. Okay, great. Well, lovely to have you all. Thank you so much. And that's everyone introduced. I suppose we should start talking about Oliver, really. I was really, really lucky, actually. I got to see Oliver in the real back in February 2020. And I just want to say thank you. Such a gorgeous show. I'm so glad, although they weren't able to go on tour with it this year, I'm so glad it is available for people to be able to get online. And as a designer myself, I was absolutely blown over because I work with accessible theatre only. That's where I started and have continued. So I was sat there getting really excited every time I spotted something that, you know, would have been completely invisible to the audience, but to me, I was like, oh, that's access. Really beautiful creative access. I personally feel like access is an art form in itself, so it's really exciting to have you guys here today so we can talk about what you did and how you did it. So looking, Hayley, I suppose it would be great, Hayley, if you could give us a little intro about yourself, your background, and you know how you came to be involved in Oliver, if that would be okay first.
Yeah, going back to the beginning or just how I came to be in Oliver?
Well, how your involvement in Oliver, I mean, you as a designer, I mean, I know you've done quite a few projects with the director Amy Leach in the past.
Yeah. Yes.
And, you know, I suppose a little bit about you and your work within accessible work and how you became involved in Oliver at the beginning.
Yeah, I suppose over the years of designing, over the past few years, I've been really fortunate to be amongst people who are really interested in celebrating access and all that it can open up. And I've been really lucky over the last few years to be involved with projects with numerous charities or working on them specifically, one specifically guided for a VI audience. And then for Amy and I, Amy got Ramps on the Moon, and Amy and I have a long experience of shows together now. We've been growing together for like a long time. I love working with Amy, like we're both quite enthusiastic, excitable people that get really excited about shows. So I think that I was really lucky she asked me to be part of Oliver, and of course I jumped on it, and in terms of that being able to think and design in a different way, I feel is really, really exciting.
Yeah, so exciting. And with the design, as I was saying, there's lots of really unique ways of creating access within the design. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the decisions you made with the design itself when it came to access? Like, for example, I know that you used like a monochrome set and colours because you were looking for how to make it accessible for a visually impaired audience, and the different layer design to create that layer of design? Sorry.
Yeah, I think my question is always how, and I certainly don't think I'm nailing this by any means. I think there's still a lot to learn, and I learned a lot from Oliver. I definitely don't think I'm getting everything right yet, but I think the key is trying to listen and learn from people, and we definitely wanted to make it accessible as possible for both capture for a deaf audience and for a visually impaired audience. That felt really important to try and do as much as we could for both. So one of the first things was to really embrace caption. I think that was a really key thing for both Amy and I. And I think always what sat in me was I just wanted to make it the heart of the design. I didn't want it on the side or above or out of the way. I wanted to explore, and still am exploring really, on how we can use typeface and storytelling and the way words arrive on a screen and disappear on a screen, the fonts we use to really heighten the storytelling, and also to just unashamedly just put it at the beginning, because I think it's a really interesting art form that still loads, to explore with it. So that felt really important and guided the design, I'd say, because I put that right in the centre then. It had to be 2 meters above people's heads, so we weren't always getting that on in people's faces. So that was a kind of really started to outline the design. It was like, well, that is going in the middle, and we're going to make that work. It's going to be like the focus, and really going to really celebrate it and explore that. And then it was how to make it, or how to try and start making designs accessible towards a VI audience. And I'd already done a little bit of work on a previous show with the Brilliant Gagger Bubble, where we'd been exploring this, and I was learning. It's about doing research and listening to people, really. And I'd learned that actually there's only 2%, I think it is, of the blind community that actually see black. A lot of people can see really strong contrasts in colour. So that felt like a really good place to start. I think a really good contrasted yellow and black is probably the best, but like I couldn't quite see Oliver in yellow and black. So actually just taking that as a real a form to move forward in, that contrast of black and white. And actually what I could do in Oliver is really set it in the winter, set it in the cold, and that could really, really steer what the design was. And I think when you start doing things like that, and I think I knew, so with Oliver, I think Oliver is brilliantly designed everywhere, and we're used to that really grungy dark brown world, and actually I assumed from a very early point of view that very early that all those kind of browns would just turn into a mush for a visually impaired audience. So trying to be big and bold and clear and stark and have contrast in the design would be a way that we could start creeping towards making that visually better for a visually impaired member of the company to get their way around it, and also for a company watching it. And I think once you start unlocking those things, you can start to I really enjoyed that process of going, okay, well, how do we create an Oliver that feels like Oliver, but it's actually our own version? Because I think where Amy and I were coming from at that point was Oliver's been designed so brilliantly, hasn't it, so many times, that I just wasn't really interested in redoing that. We've seen it, it's been brilliant, we've done it. So what is our version of Oliver like? And I think once you free yourself up and put those, it's like putting the ingredients in, isn't it? Taking some new ingredients and mixing them all in the pot. It's like, what can we achieve? So using those two elements, the caption and the VI, really fed towards building our set for Oliver.
Yeah, well, you were involved right from the beginning then with the R&D process as well, which is just, I think that's really vital and really,
isn't it?
It makes such a difference, because it means that your design can evolve from the people who are in the room, as well as the director. Especially I know Amy works very collaboratively with the ensemble, and that's such a beautiful thing. And then you can learn so much from all of your other artists who are involved as well. It's like one thing I loved when I was watching it was the captions. We've recently been working with captions at Hot Coals, where we bring them in at the beginning, and we design them before we make the show, which is which we've discovered is a really exciting thing. But it means we can be really creative with the design of the captions and the that as an element of storytelling in itself. And as a neurodiverse person, one thing I was really overjoyed with Oliver was that the captions, although they weren't necessarily for me, they were accessible to me, because they weren't the choices of colors weren't I can't read black on white, for example, or yellow on black. So, you know, the choice of colours you used, or the way that they were projected, meant that they were really accessible, which was like,
and well, a killer was a brilliant projection designer who did that. But I think it's really interesting what you're saying in terms of accessible, because actually I find it accessible. Like, you know, big stories sometimes, you know, I think it gives big clarity, you know, just a title scene and see those words. I think it can be really helpful to all of us, can it? Not just, yeah,
it just gives you the extra, you know, that extra bit of storytelling, that extra layer. And you know, with all the beautiful colours, they were still earthy, they were still gritty, as you said, and that would have really helped with the visually impaired audiences as well. I'm just going to look at my notes quick.
Yeah.
Now with the full design as well, thinking about the visually impaired audiences. Now, Kirsty will be able to come in here as well. We were looking, when I was watching, I was really excited because I had the impression, and I believe I was right after talking to Claire with it as well, that you actually used a lot of sound elements within your design when it came to costume props and things like that as well. Could you tell us a bit more about that approach?
Do you want to go for that, Kirsty? Did you want to answer that one?
Oh yeah, can do. Yeah, I think, did you say, is it Claire that you spoke to about it? Yeah, so it was Claire's bangles. She had bangles on when she was Nancy. So they were the chorus to begin with, which is that black background that Hayley was saying, like lots of different textures, things like that. And then obviously when she came out as Nancy, as well as being in that classic red, she had the bangles. And then Stephen had the keys, didn't he? And Ben had his stick, so whenever he came on, you could hear. And Amy, it wouldn't have it so much, and it was Steph Lacey who played Mrs. Thingamy, but before lockdown, pre-COVID, and then post-COVID, Amy Flanagan played Mrs. Thingamy, and her version had the spikes usually on the wheelchair, and that was when you knew she was coming, or when you knew that the gang was there, was sort of when you heard that. You heard that noise. It's like a collective, wasn't it? Yeah.
It feels like a good tool to take and move forward with. I think we could have. I'd love to explore that more fully, you know, on the next round of design. It feels like something that could really work, and yeah, can be used a lot more.
I mean, it's so simple yet unbelievably effective, because we just started working on peppering in audio description within script, which is of course something you've done, you know, Amy did with Bryony with script. And talking to Ben Wilson, of course, who was Mr. Bumble and, you know, audio description extraordinaire. He, you know, with the project we've just been doing, looking at peppering in the audio description within the text, but then thinking about how you can incorporate audio description elements within the design as well. That's exciting, you know, that's really exciting, and something I don't think many people would necessarily think to do, because, you know, it's almost invisible.
It's a brilliant idea, and actually I've just been having a few email conversations with Ben, just trying to get some feedback on Oliver, and actually he's got some brilliant ideas about how to make sets aural, and, you know, for scene location and stuff. I think it's definitely something to move forward with in our minds and like be experimenting with, for sure.
Yeah, he's absolutely. It's yeah, absolutely brilliant. And also, like, sorry, I'm reading my notes again.
That's all right.
And yeah, also thinking about the costume and the way you create access, not just for the audience, but also for the performers on stage, making sure that the set is designed so that it's safe, and the sight lines and everything like that. I know that's always something that I'm always having to negotiate with, thinking about sight lines for the audience, but also making sure that the actors can maneuver safely and see each other. So that was a big element you'd have to have considered for the design, but also backstage, Kirsty, you would have had to think about that for the actors. Can you talk about how you dealt with the access issues with the actors? Great.
So look, I'm the deputy head of wardrobe for Leeds Playhouse. The reason I came to Leeds Playhouse was I saw that they were building the next Ramps on the Moon show. I had toured with Tommy a few years before that as the head of wardrobe on that. So I had been on the road to all the different venues. There's lots of different backstage spaces that Ramps on the Moon use, and so was aware of that and had the working knowledge of what was needed, I guess, in the wings. By doing it, like Hayley said, by no means perfect, definitely by doing it wrong before you do it right. But it was sort of like that learning experience we had the benefit of during tech, and then sort of putting the show together for a theatre space and then for a filmed environment as well. There were two different approaches to it, which is really good. So like sort of the actual running of the show, I suppose, we having that deaf awareness, so knowing that the team that are going to be working, the team that work the closest probably with any actor is always the dressing team, as well as ASMs and stage management. But in terms of that one-on-one and needing to be able to communicate with each other, it's tends to be the dressers. So making sure they had, even if it's basic levels of training in BSL, is really helpful. A really good level of light in the wings if the design allows, and Hayley's design definitely allowed for that in all the spaces, that you could have a good, it was masked enough so that you could have a good amount of light in the wings. So people can lip read, worst comes to worst. And then also in COVID times, I've got it here actually, I'm not being sponsored, but a good face mask you can see through. This is visor we've sort of lived with news whilst we were filming, so people can communicate, you know, especially during a live show. It's always good to be able to know what people need. It does change day to day as well as overall. But yeah, so like the wings, and yeah, basic audio deaf awareness, I think, and knowing when to be tactile and things like that with the deaf company. A lot of the time, you know, it's a very tactile thing to make sure that you don't take someone by surprise, and that during a quick change it's all about feeling and about sort of tapping and making sure, and not being afraid to do that and to get to know each other beforehand, I think.
Yeah, I know that Claire said that the your dressing team were absolutely fantastic, and she felt really supported by them, and they were, you know, she was very grateful for them. So I know that they did a wonderful job, just to add that in. But yeah, it is. I know it's hugely important to be able to, you know, have that support, especially in a big show with lots of actors with different access requirements. So, were you involved, Kirsty? Were you involved in the earlier process, or did you come in later with the actual development of the show?
So it's probably we're past the R&D stage. We get so in terms of production wardrobe, which is the side of it that I was involved in this time, unlike on Tommy. And so what Hayley does, we'll do a white card presentation, and then she'll do a final design presentation. So we sit in the white card. So once Hayley and Amy have got the idea of where they're going with it, Hayley then presents that to us, and we look at that, like how we bring that to life, really. And that tends to sometimes be before it gets cast, not always. It depends. And so looking at it in terms of makes and sources and things like that, rather than basing it exactly on who the actor is at that point. So yeah, for example, we saw the designs, didn't we, for Mrs. Thing and Me. We had an idea of what we wanted before we knew that was the actress playing was going to be a wheelchair user. And so there was that conversation, that ongoing design conversation throughout, of how we would make a full skirted dress work for somebody who had wheels very close to where the skirt would go. And I know that Steph's previous experience on other shows, for example, that hadn't been considered, and that was something she always struggled with period costume. And this was something that we just took as an opportunity, I think, and just, you know, Hayley listened to exactly what was needed, and we sort of pared it back and falsified the fullness in the skirt. Steph was slightly different to Amy. Steph, it needed to work stood up as well as being sat down in the chair, and so we sort of falsified the fullness on the waist and then made it so that it was more gathered. I could think back.
Yeah.
Around the base of Steph's skirt. And then that was like a back fastening as well, because we made in the wings this time we did quick changes. She had a dresser helping her do the quick changes so Steph could dress herself a little bit. And then with Amy, we decided to make that front fastening, and that came out of conversations we had in fitting, so that because everybody's access is different, like you said, and it's about approaching and using the same design and making it work for the person who's going to be wearing it day in, day out, basically.
Yeah.
And to back, oh,
Sorry.
no, go on. Well, I was just going to say, to back Kirsty up there, I think what Kirsty does so brilliantly, and the brilliant costume department at Leeds Playhouse, is they allow me loads of openness, because I think once we go into a fitting room, we're a team, and I think what they do, there are designs, you know, there are ideas, but what they allow me to do so brilliantly, and together actually, because the costume department have loads of brilliant ideas, so does Kirsty's, that together then we may go with that design, or in some cases we just come up with totally new ones. If I think about the design for Swifty, that completely came out of meeting, it was Steph, you know, because I think the things when you go to a fitting room, it's like everybody is their own expert within themselves and what they can do and what they can achieve. So I think it's about listening and being inspired by that person, because actually if you can go in and be quite open and go, okay, so what's the conversation? How can we help you be the best version of yourself? What are we going to get excited with? And then definitely we've had lots of conversations, I'd say, like that. And the fitting room Kirsty was like, oh, then they have an idea, and because they feel more comfortable, hopefully, like, well, we're not just going, you have to wear this, even if it doesn't work for you. That we've developed characters in that fitting room by just bouncing around ideas, getting excited about the possibilities that we can use. So yeah, whilst there are designs to begin with, because we need to start somewhere, sometimes we might not end up there, and I think that's what Leeds and Kirsty have done brilliantly. It's just like we just are enabled to design to the person and the character that we all create together.
That's brilliant. And also because you also changed, if I'm right in believing, you changed the because you adapted the wheelchair for Steph, and then when Amy took over the role for the filming, you used her wheelchair instead, and you adapted that one, didn't you? So you basically are literally, you know, adapting it to each individual all the way around.
Yeah, and it's funny. Yeah, absolutely. But like also I think it's more like I don't know if you feel like, did you feel like you adapted, Kirsty? I feel like we just go, who have we got now? Like, what do you need? What do we do? Like, and it just feels like getting excited about that person and like what that person's character is. Because actually they were both had different, you know, brought different things to the table. So, you know, actually in Amy's case, she ended up with all these horns on her wheelchair and like made a whole load of, you know, so it was very different. And I think what's brilliant about the team there is then once those ideas start to get concreted the first time round, say with the wheelchair, you know, I definitely can't take any credit for that wheelchair. It's Andy Wood and his head of scenic at Leeds, just sort of, you know, if you just let your people be brilliant and do what they can do really well, sort of came out with this amazing chair that smoked and did all kinds of things and then fit the character really well. So I'd say, like, definitely in the process, I think Kirsty's like all these ideas, you know, we have an overall design and a lot of that is kept in, but there's also a lot of room in that to go, oh, actually this person can do this, or what if we gave them this, or that person can make that really well, and oh yeah, now we've got this. And you know, it has grown as well, to find something that we all felt excited about.
I love that. I love we always work with a big team of artists, and we throw loads of ideas at them, and then we say, off you go. And say, you know, we'll give them a palette and you know, a feel and even a piece of music at times, just to say, you know, this is what we want, and come to us with ideas. It's very much a collaborative process, and it sounds like you guys had that as well with all of your design team. It's so wonderful. I don't think people realise to what degree what happens behind, you know, behind the scenes, yeah. You know, and how much it gives to the show. They see it, yeah, obviously, but they don't necessarily comprehend how involved the other side is. It's really exciting to be able to
we're really lucky at that. I think the Playhouse, especially the team, like we have the ability to create to satisfy access needs. Basically, we have the time. We make sure we ask for enough time during fitting so that conversations can happen about characterisations. Like looking at Rebecca, for example, playing Luna, approaching Rebecca's character was so different to everybody else's. Rebecca really needed to understand what she was wearing and where that would come from and what the story behind that was. And, you know, so making sure that we got Rebecca back in, didn't we, for a fitting just before we did the breaking down, so she could see it brand new and know how that would feel for Luna if Luna had that, you know, before she then had to do what she had to do as a character in the show. And Rebecca, it was really important Rebecca understood that before we then took this beautiful dress that she tried on a lot. And also, when we're doing the fittings with Rebecca, and because of the way Rachel, who made her dress, we put lots of extra fabric in the seams, basically, so we can alter things right to, you know, to get it perfect. And Rebecca, I remember her feeling like there was too much fabric going on, and us, you know, really having the time to be able to explain to her what that would feel like eventually, and then giving her the opportunity to wear that.
And even more than that, what you guys did brilliantly is allow us to have an initial fitting with Rebecca, actually, where there was no pressure of anything at all. We just tried on dresses and outfits just to see how they would make her feel and what would make her feel good and what didn't make her feel good before we made anything and actually designed anything in the end, didn't we? So we kind of had this beautiful hour where we were just allowed to experiment and see what was going to make her feel good. And that's what, Leeds do brilliantly, is they create the space, and their costume department there is so brilliant and supportive that they just made space to allow that to happen. And actually that time is so invaluable, because then you just go on a process together that is positive and you know what you're all working towards. So just taking that initial hour in the beginning meant that was then a beautiful process, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I actually do think that one was the most like your original design.
It was really.
It's like, bang on. She knew where she was going. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. The amount of times as an actor I've been put in costumes, literally like, there's a costume, mostly in TV obviously, but there's a costume, off you go, get on stage, and you don't have that time to, you know, to feel like the character, or feel like, is this my character, or is those discussions are so important. But I think even more so in, you know, it's really lovely to see, to hear that you had that time to be able to do that with Rebecca as well. So,
and hopefully, like, would you say all, like, I think costume for people is such an intimate thing, isn't it? And it's like what we all chose to get up and wear today. Like, what we put on our bodies makes us feel okay in that person we are today. And I think trying to force somebody on stage in something they don't feel comfortable on, you're never going to be the best version of yourself, are you, if you're not feeling great or feeling empowered? So I think those conversations are vital. And I think hopefully, and we really enjoy that, don't we, Kirsty? And then you feel like, I think it's also good for us, because then we can feel confident about what we're doing. Would you say, Kirsty?
Yeah, definitely. Like, the first thing I would do whenever I meet a new company is literally take their measurements. It's the most like ice-breaking thing you can do, because that's just what, you know, the first thing, it's just what you do. And like, that is so, it's a very intimate relationship you have with somebody. That's the first thing that you get to know about them. And, you know, it's really important, I think, especially on a Ramps on the Moon show, that you are that you take the time to know about what works for people and doesn't, and like you said, give them the confidence. You know, it's so exposing what they do, and the last thing we want to do as a department is make that difficult, make that more difficult. You know. Yeah,
it's amazing. And looking at the fact that you made the show for the stage initially, and then you had to do it for filming. Did you have to make many adaptations in general to the set, or you know, or if you did have to make some changes, what were they? Because I think it's really useful, especially in the climate we're in now and people having to film. It'd be good to know.
I think actually it wasn't so much design led, I would say. I mean, the tricky thing, I know Amy is, and the film who's done loads of brilliant work, is trying to figure out how captions would go on screen versus filming captions on stage. But I think what it did, because it was such a big show to put together initially, it gave everybody in the rehearsal room more of a chance actually to go back over something brilliantly that they solidified, but to go over those things that maybe didn't feel like there was enough time the first time around, because we were trying to do so many things. So I think there was a lot more work that happened there. Definitely we got new actors, which was brilliant. It was like a new lease of life, and so we got them in, hopefully catered, and worked with them. You know, actually it was strangely happened that like some of the costumes that worked on our previous actors just totally worked on our new actors, and then it was like, oh, okay, actually this is the best one, which means we've kind of done our work, I think, hopefully. But there was definitely new things we brought in with new actors. But I'd say that was the main change. Yeah, there was just a lot more time to work on it. I think the story in the room and those kind of re-going over those scenes.
Yeah. And you had, am I right in believing you had in the rehearsal room, they actually had the structure to start working with, which is such an amazing, I suppose we call it a luxury, but an amazing thing that, because of course you've got people with different physical abilities and of course visually impaired actor. You've got Ben having to maneuver around, so it's really good for them to be able to get used to rehearsing with the set.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And actually Ben has we just had a conversation about that, just saying that when the set went, to be put on stage, that actually for him personally, that it was like that, having that big bold structure in the middle was a real guider to working around the stage. So that's quite interesting for me to take forward. But yeah, we were really lucky. They had structure in there to work with, and we were able to put captions up in the space as well. I mean, we are very lucky to have that big rehearsal room and be able to do that, and the staff at Leeds Playhouse to be able to put that in place for us.
Yeah, that is so wonderful. When Claire told me, I was like, wow,
That was amazing.
Normally it's just some tape on the floor and you've got to figure out where you're maneuvering around the tape, and then you get a few days on stage, but to be able to have it in space, that's really, I think that's a really good sort of a way of working. And as I say, bringing in designers from the beginning,
Yeah, it's great. And I think, because you can, and I'm sure like we've both been in that situation, Jo, is where that if you don't have the set in really early, you can just, all those things that you thought you were really going to use, you just won't end up using because there's only a week to figure it all out in, rather than becoming like, just embedded in the room and it's a thing that you use. Yeah, it's a great practice if it can be achieved.
Yeah, all from the start rather than lopping it on at the end. No, it's brilliant. Yeah. It's really great. Was there anything else anyone else wanted to chat about? Have I missed anything? Because I can pick up on the bits I've seen when I watched it on stage. Or is there anything else that you guys wanted to add connected to the learning, or things that you felt were really important that came about from making the show?
I think, like on a simple, no, it's not a simple level, I think the art of communication was a really interesting thing that I'm learning about. And one of the interpreters said to me, in the tech, we were sat and we were talking, he said, look at this room. He said, on the first day I was always being next to someone's side interpreting, but over the last 6 weeks, however long we were together, you've all found a way of communicating together. And I think that's really, really special. And I think the thing I'm learning more and more in terms of design is it's communication and listening and learning and being open, not feeling like I have to have all the ideas personally, letting, learning and listening and embracing everybody's ideas and not being worried about that. But definitely from listening and communicating and wanted to move. I just think it can open up so many avenues. I think we definitely haven't had an Oliver that I didn't foresee in my head that came out of this. And I think if we move forward, including, all of our needs, we all have certain needs that we need to bring to a show, that you can just create things that are really, really exciting. I definitely in my head don't see it as adaptations or we need to include this. I think I've just started to go, this is just really celebratory and, oh my God, we can do this and we can do this. And it opens up the box of thinking. I think that's what I've taken away from it. What about you, Kirsty?
Oh, it's made me want to, I think doing Tommy made me just really understand that access was something that everybody was responsible for, and also that idea of not making anybody feel like they can't. And so from like personal level, that was like my mission, like coming out of Tommy, and then working on Oliver. I think it just gave the opportunity to work with a really great designer who knew how to design for a variety of people and listen, can read a room, really knows how to read a room, really knows how to respond and take it all on. And yeah, I think it's about time. The time that we got to produce Oliver was really important. And also the thing that I went away and thought about doing it was because Ramps on the Moon work as a co-producer with other rep theatres, we used a lot of the stock from Sheffield we used, and from Birmingham rep we used. I got in touch with Debbie and with Kay, and I sort of used our stock at Leeds Playhouse as well, and so we could source that way, because it was a period piece, you know, we could almost shop, which was something which was really helpful. So it didn't mean that we were just necessarily making things from scratch and that was the final piece. People, like I said, on Rebecca, it wasn't just Rebecca's case, it was with like Jack, who originally played Mr. Brownlow, and also with Christopher, who then played him post-COVID. They got to try on different looks and try different things. Like Hayley designed a really green and pink palette for Rose and Mr. Brownlow, and sort of that beige, we got to really try on lots of different things using the stock from all of the co-producing theatres, which was really helpful. So yeah, I think that was that's something that meant we had options, definitely, and we got, and Hayley got to go away and like you said, rethink things and come back and really tailor. That's probably what it is, really tailor to what worked.
You're totally right, Kirsty, to have options, and which Kirsty does brilliantly. And also, like, I think once we're in that room, we're a team, aren't we, Kirsty? Like, your opinions are just as, you know, like Kirsty has loads of opinions about how to make things brilliant, and we definitely go at it together. But like having options and not making anybody feel stuck, I think is that, isn't it? It's like going, we can see all this stuff on the rail, we can try it all on, some of it might work, some of it might not, let's not worry about it. But today is just we're trying all this stuff on and finding it. Definitely feels like a really nice way, doesn't it, of going in. I think that's a really good point, Kirsty.
Yeah, definitely meant that you got that comment, you really understood, you got to have those conversations, which was really, you could see it from everybody that came through in their fittings. They left that room feeling like they'd been heard, which I think is, I don't know, any show, I think that's really important. Yeah.
So that just sounds just so wonderful.
Great time, we had cake, we had we had so much fun.
It sounds like one big wonderful collaboration, and I think that is, you know, that's when
this is Hayley's new sign. She refuses to take it. I'm like, this is Hayley's sign.
Go team.
It's so much better when everyone, you know, when it's a big collaboration, a big ensemble creation. And I think you guys have done such a beautiful job with Oliver, and I'm really you know, it's great to, you know, as you say, we're always learning, we're always evolving, we're always, you know, the next show will have other new things and everyone will learn from what you guys have done. And it's just, yeah, it's truly, yeah, it's wonderful. And we're very grateful for the beautiful show that you guys have all created for us. So we've reached the end. Unfortunately, we ran out of time, so I'm just going to say a massive thank you. We thank you for coming to chat to us today. I hope you enjoyed yourselves, and if those audiences at home watching on the channel today enjoyed, please hit the like button, and don't forget there will be some 4 other episodes of the Green Room to go out, and you can find out about the writing and all the other different elements of the creation of Oliver. And also to remind you that Oliver Twist will be available until the 20th of November via the Leeds Playhouse website. So all that remains for me to say is a massive thank you to our wonderful BSL interpreters today. And also thank you to Ramps on the Moon for collaborating with us on this today. And a huge thank you to Hayley and Kirsty for coming and having a chat with me. It's been absolutely lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
And our guests, Hayley Grindle Kirsty Blades, hosted by
Jo Sargeant, BSL interpreters, Emma Dunleavy-Dale, Anna Trethaway, Tom Holroyd, The GreenRoom, a Ramps on the Moon takeover, looking at the making of Oliver Twist at Leeds Playhouse, a video podcast produced by Strive, a collective made up of the DH Ensemble and Hot Coals Productions, supported by Ramps on the Moon. You can find all the videos and more at www.strivecollective.org/the-green-room, or alternatively visit the Ramps on the Moon Lessons Learned page at www.rampsonthemoon.co.uk/lessons-learned. Twitter at Strive Collective with no E, #TheGreenRoom_UK. Celebrating best practice, spotlighting unsung heroes, inspiring action. Logos for Strive, Hot Coals Productions and the DH Ensemble, Ramps on the Moon, and supported using public funding from Arts Council England.